Welcome everybody, it's great that you're back, and I'm so glad that this week we have Eva Caroll with us, who is a teacher of 25 years, and she's going to share some of her journey going through burnout, but also top tips. She's now a coach, and she has a lot to share of wisdom that she wants to make sure that everyone takes on board and really starts to take action. Because one of her mantras is, if nothing changes, then nothing changes. So Eva, welcome. It's great to have you here.
Hi, hello.
Hi. Do you want to just tell everyone a little bit about you?
Yeah, sure. I'm Eva. I was teaching for 25 years in the UK. After about 19 years, I moved to Turkey to teach English, and I returned, and I then changed into the special needs sector. So previously I was mainstream secondary. I loved special needs teaching. In fact, I love teaching. What I did find really difficult was the toxic environments, especially towards the end of my career. I have two grown-up children. I left teaching just over a year ago, about a year and a half ago, and I set up a coaching business called Eva Carroll Inspire and Achieve, which I didn't manage to quite add the achieve onto the and I've been working a lot with teenagers, but also teachers who are struggling with burnout or struggling with stress or who are not happy. I left teaching without another job to go to. So it really pushed me, I had to really, I had no one financially to support me. I'm single. My kids are grown up. So I decided to rent out my house. So for the last year, I've been traveling nonstop. I'm currently in Spain. And yeah, I've also set up a travel business quite recently, probably in the last 5 months, I think. And I book people's travel, which kind of aligns with my passion for traveling. And I also do a tiny bit of network marketing as part of that role.
Amazing. Thank you. Well, so today we're going to dig in a little bit about, if you don't mind, telling us what burnout looked like for you and why you think that was your experience. Because obviously you said that you've worked in a few schools. So why do you think you burnt out? Because you said you love teaching.
I think it's an exhausting job, and I think people anyone that isn't a teacher or in education really never understands the actual stress involved in being a teacher. I think I read somewhere that we make sort of more minute by minute decisions than a brain surgeon. So it's a tough job. As I was a teacher, I was a single parent. I have a disabled son who's now 30, but at the beginning of my career, obviously I was bringing up two very young children on my own. So, but the burnout really came, I think, towards the point where I decided to go to Turkey. And that was 19 years in. And up until then, I was okay. But in my 19th year, I just kept walking into school, and I was heading 2 departments with no staff underneath me. So I was basically completely on my own. And I got to the last year. I'd loved the first 3 years, and something changed in me, and I just knew that something was different. And I was walking up the path, and I just felt really miserable. And I thought, oh my God. And I didn't want to change because I was on a good salary. It was near to where I lived, and there were lots of positives. The kids were pretty nice kids. But there was just something in there. I just knew that I was exhausted. And I think, I worked long hours. At that point, I really didn't take the advice I now give, which was I had email on my work phone. I was constantly on my laptop. So I would literally leave the office from school, go home, have a bit of dinner, and then I'd be back with my laptop checking emails, doing bits and pieces. And obviously that wasn't, now in the later part of my career, I stopped doing that completely. I took my phone. I thought, there's no way I'm checking emails. But for many, many years, that's what I did. I literally, and I think I felt that it was expected. But, in what job would you contact your doctor or your solicitor and expect them to pick up, messages on a Saturday night? You wouldn't. So I think in terms of the burnout, it came in the later part of my career. And I think mostly it came from the fact that the schools I worked in were quite toxic. They were very, I've worked in a range of schools, but I found some schools unwelcoming. and very sort of, you're new and we're not going to let you into the fold. I found that there were SLT who were very controlling to the point where, you know, I had to run the most ridiculous things by them. And I'm like, oh my God, I've been teaching for 25 years. I've been head of department. Give me some acknowledgement for my experience. But it was extremely, oh gosh, I can't even think of the word, but it was very, 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 very controlled. And I could give millions of examples, but I won't. And I think that didn't help with how I felt. I felt like I was going into an environment that was so toxic, and I wasn't trusted and I wasn't treated as a professional. And that really made me not want to sort of continue teaching. I think, I'm trying to think of some of the other examples. I think it's the fact that, you know, like I was head of careers, and one of the things, like, kids would come to see me, and I had a tutor group, a sixth form tutor group, and I did all their UCAS statements, and their English wasn't great, and I'd have to spend a huge amount of my time, which came out of my evenings, sitting and rewriting their UCAS statements for them. And then because I was very good at it, and I have a careers background, I've done head of careers in other schools, of course, the word spreads. And then you've got other kids from other tutor groups coming, oh, miss, would you have a look? And it is difficult because, you know, you want to do your best by the kids. And it's really hard to turn away a lovely child who, you know, who's maybe not got a tutor that's going to sit and spend as much time as I would. But there have to be boundaries. And I think, you know, and it's hard because we always want to do the best by the kids. And I think that's the bit that the management get us on, because, you know, that's why we do this job. We want to get the best by the kids. We want to always do our best for them. And so it's then easy for management to keep piling on, but it's not our responsibility, you know, to be spending hours and hours of our evenings doing things for kids that, you know, we're not paid for, quite frankly. And that leads to burnout, because I remember when I took over head of PSHE, I was already head of business. They approached me, they wanted me to do it. And when I looked at the PSHE curriculum, it was rubbish. And I literally threw it in the bin and started from scratch. And, you know, and I worked on that every night. I would sit in my living room and suddenly it'd be 10 o'clock and I'd realise I was sat in the pitch black. And I wasn't even being paid, by the way, because I didn't get the job until September. So all through the summer, instead of being out enjoying myself or sat in the garden, I was on my laptop creating a new scheme of work. And I just recall that when I asked for a half a day off to go and get my Turkish visa, and I didn't even need cover, I was deducted a half day's pay. And I made a point of saying to the head, well, thank you for agreeing to this leave. And, you know, I know that you don't have to, but, and I reminded him of that. Now, he never responded, because actually I thought that was pretty, and I think it was just little things like that along the way kind of led to me feeling frustrated, but also led to me feeling burnout. And I think, you know, people pleasing is something that Marina and I just spoke about. And definitely I was a people pleaser. And I think because I always was very efficient, very organized, lots of that stuff then came to me. So it's like, oh, we need someone to do a collection. Oh, who can we trust? Oh, Eva. And so you get pushed. The better you are, the more, you know, they say, who to give a good, there's some sort of expression which is who to give work to do, who to basically delegate to, someone who's already busy. Yeah. Because they're going to get it done. And I think all of those kinds of examples led to me feeling burnt out and kind of just disillusioned from teaching. And as I said, the saddest thing is, and I've shared this in many of my posts on LinkedIn, that I've never fallen out of love with teaching. I love being in the classroom, absolutely love, especially as a PSHE teacher, which is what I did towards the end of my career. I started as a business and IT teacher, and I picked up PSHE and careers kind of a few years in. And by the end, that was pretty much my main subject. And teaching something like that to kids, I loved it, absolutely. But I just didn't love all of the politics and all of the rubbish that goes on, you know, in schools, and the expectation that we've never, you know, there's very little praise. There's an expectation that we, you know, we just keep giving and keep giving and keep giving and keep giving our time, because our time is free. You know, if we were actually paid overtime, you'd soon see they'd strip back and say, oh, well, don't worry about doing that then. But because our time is free and, you know, there isn't a sort of cut-off point, I mean, I can remember being in Texas many years ago, and I remember getting up at 6 a.m. in the morning before my children got up. We were on holiday and writing schemes of work for careers. And I look back and I think, oh my God, I must have been crazy. But, you know, I think,
gosh, that's quite interesting. So what would you say to teachers who are now going on holiday, getting up at 6 a.m. to write that scheme of work? What would be your message to them now that you are wiser, you have learned, and now you teach it? So what would be your message?
I think it's really about setting boundaries for yourself and for others. So, you know, we can't just set boundaries for others. We have to set and say, this is the time I'm going to finish work, and whatever is done. And I think perfectionism is another big thing that I certainly suffered with as well. You know, and that adds to your own workload. And actually, most people don't give a damn, you know, how perfect it is. And so sometimes we can sit and hone things and spend so much time on things. And really, you know, the lesson's taught and you move on. And, you know, things like observations, who cares? As long as you get good, who cares that you're not outstanding? As long as you good. One of my headmasters said to me once, Eva, good is good enough. And I was in an outstanding school and I thought, oh my God. And he knew that I was suffering with perfectionism. I was workaholic, you know, and he recognized that. And that's what he said to me. And I think, you know, avoiding burnout is really setting boundaries for learning to say, no, I haven't got time to do that. So, you know, you can say sorry if you like or not, but saying, I don't have time to do that. I already have this and this to do. I won't be able to do that, you know. And I think it's about learning assertiveness, but also learning to value your time. Because another quote I see a lot is, you know, that your bosses won't remember you. As soon as you walk out of a school, you'll be replaced and that'll be it. Whereas your family and your children will remember that you weren't there or you weren't present. You might have been physically there, but if you're sat on your laptop all evening messaging, you're not physically, well, you are physically, but you're not mentally present with your family. And I think, you know, I think that's a really important point.
It's really, really important. So you were telling me a story because you're telling us about boundaries and putting yourself first and that sort of thing. And I'm going to say to you that in school, that's really difficult. So I've been in schools for 30 years and it's very uncomfortable sometimes when you try to put yourself first. So would you share the story you told me before about your daughter?
Yeah, my daughter is a teacher and she's definitely very assertive, and she's just recently started a school and they have an hour lunch, which in her previous private school, they didn't have anything like that. So she started to take some time out during the day and take half an hour to walk outside, which is obviously very good for her mental health. It gives her half an hour away from the students. And one of her TAs was very sort of critical about it. What, you're going to take a full hour's lunch? And she's like, yes. And basically she doesn't really give a damn what they think about whether she's entitled to an hour's lunch. That's on the timetable. And even though they, you know, she can see that her team of TAs are kind of like, oh my God, she's taking an hour lunch. But, you know, she's got a right to have a lunch, you know, and so therefore we need to stand up. I worked in a school where I often stood up and whatever. And unfortunately, when you don't have people behind you will say things, but they don't ever say it. They don't ever confront. And I think sometimes, you know, in meetings or, you know, you need to stand up, I suppose, as a whole and say, we're not happy about this, or we need more time for this, or whatever it might be. Because again, bosses will keep passing to you as long as you let them, you know, like they will keep passing down extra things as long as you don't say no. And they know that, you know, and yeah, it's uncomfortable, but you know, you deserve to have I'm burnt out and I've left teaching and I miss parts of it. But if you want to avoid burnout, then you need to make some changes, because it's true. If nothing changes, nothing will change.
Yeah. I love that. And I think what the key for me is when we're going to make changes, it has to be really small steps. So you're not going to be able to jump in and change everything straight away. And I've got a journal coming out and we work on small steps. So even today, what is one step I could take towards achieving that outcome? Because the research, it talks all about, tiny habits, one thing changing every day, or consistently changing your thought pattern, or your ability to say no, even to small things, gives you the confidence to then build up. And eventually then you become stronger and more resilient, and actually have better work-life balance, better habits, better mindsets. And I think the thing that I've learnt from having quite a profound experience of burnout and really crashing badly was that when I got back up and started to put boundaries in around me to protect myself, those around me didn't like it, because I had such an embedded pattern of people pleaser and perfectionism and over conscientious and all these different things. And that doesn't suit a lot of people. But actually, if you can go and explain, a lot of leaders out there will understand if you say to them, look, this has been my situation and I can see little symptoms of burnout coming out. And I'm putting myself first, because actually the research shows if you take better care of yourself, you are more productive, you're more creative. Just like with your daughter taking a proper lunch break, she's going to come back and she's going to be much more energetic and creative, and it benefits everybody. So I think the assumption that working harder is better and working longer is better, it's actually not true. And we need to change people's expectations and thinking of how we're going to work. Well, I'm so grateful to you for coming on the podcast today. And if people want to find you, Eva, how would they find you?
So I have a profile on LinkedIn, which is Eva Carroll Inspire and Achieve. I do work with teachers on things such as what we've talked about, perfectionism, setting boundaries, assertiveness, and so on. I also have a Facebook account, which is just a normal Facebook account. I think probably, LinkedIn is probably the best place to find me. I also have a website. If you were to type in Eva Carroll Inspire and Achieve, you would find it quite easily. There is a page specifically for teachers. I have various other pages as well, but so that would probably be the best place.
Okay, that's great. I'll put the links in the blurb for this podcast so people can find you if they want. I'm so grateful, because it's really interesting to hear about the reality on the ground for teachers and what it really feels like when you feel overwhelmed and life is a struggle. But there is always hope, isn't there? And there are strategies that we can put in place. So I hope people have taken some positives from today, and some things to learn and some things to try out as well, because you're not alone. You're really not alone. So I look forward to people listening to this and to the next episode coming out soon. Thanks for listening. I hope you took something of value from today. If you want to connect, I'm at rowenahicks.com, or I have a Facebook group, which is Preventing Teacher Burnout. So I look forward to connecting to you at one of those.